Patrick Cook here. So, welcome to session number 8 of our Mandelbulb3D Epic Rendering. Now, in the previous session, I was talking about this concept of tiling. All right, so here it is up on our screen here. And so I think you have a pretty good handle on what this is. All right, but in summary, what this tiling process does is it will take a large rendering and it will splice it up or separate it into segments, sections, or tiles, and then render each of those tiles out individually as a whole separate image file. All right, and then do that individually until all the tiles are fully rendered. And then it's up to us to figure out how to put all that back together. All right, now let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about this reassembly. All right, because this is really kind of a two-part deal here. Now, the Mandelbulb is going to take our image and it's going to segment into rows, all right, and columns. We get to decide how many rows, all right, these are rows, how many rows and how many columns that this grid, this matrix, is going to have. Okay, we get to decide that. We're going to talk about that, obviously. What you get is, what do we got here? We got 4, we got 16. Okay, so we've got 16 files that are laid down on our hard drive when this whole process is done. Each one of these files is going to be one of these tiles. Okay, now we need to figure out how to put all that back together. All right, and it's usually referred to as stitching, sometimes referred to as merging, and it can be tricky. Unfortunately, the Mandelbulb3D application did not and does not provide any method of stitching all of these files back together into our large resolution, which would not have any segments. The edges, okay, this edge and this edge perfectly align. Perfectly. I mean, perfect down to the pixel. So when all this is stitched back together, you don't see any of these segment separations anymore. All right, it all blends back into one big picture. All right. And if we started with a 9,000 and by a 6,000, just to pick some numbers, all right, these tiles, once they're merged back together, we would have a 9,000 by 6,000 file. All right, with no lines, no divisions, no grids, and no indication that the original image was chopped up into, in this case, 16 tiles and then reassembled. But that's the beauty of it. But the Mandelbulb will do the tiling, but it doesn't do the stitching or the merging, all right, or the merging. We have to have another application to do that. And believe me, that was tough for me to figure out. The problem is that most of your stitchers, mergers, anticipate that you have a panoramic. Let me show you what I mean here. Let's clear this. All right. Yeah, it's really cool. You know, and I've done that. I've been into photography for forever, and I've done panoramic shots. I'm not talking about where you just hold the camera and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about you're taking a camera. That's a terrible camera body, right? And then you have it do a shot here, a shot there, a shot here, all right, and so on and so forth, and then come back all the way back, and then take shots all along here and come all the way back and all along here. And what you get is what's often referred to as a gigapixel, where you've got gigapixels. You got billions of pixels once all this is reassembled. Now, the issue with this is, let's see if I can kind of illustrate it. Let's see. I don't have a camera in front of me here, but let's just take this little device here. Now, the problem is that if you have your camera that's going like that from a stationary point, all right, there's this stationary rotation point, all right, you're going to kind of get a bending. Your image will look something like this. You'll get like a barrel effect, all right, in your final image, something like that. All right, all right. The reason for that is because you're trying to get pictures along an axis here, but everything is from a central pivot point. So you get that distortion, and then you come back and you do it again, you get distortion. So you get an effect like this. All right, now, and your images, each of your individual shots are in here. And so here's where I'm going with this, and I want to be careful to not get sidetracked, but it's important that you understand why your normal everyday stitching software will never work properly with the Mandelbulb tiles, because these panoramic stitching software anticipate that they also have to correct for this parallax error, all right? And they try to correct for that. You don't have the parallax error in your Mandelbulb tiles. But it tries to fix it anyway, and then the software sits there and they're chewing it up and they're trying to figure out what's going on. In order for this software to fix this parallax, they have to know, they have to be able to, let's just take two tiles, all right, from up here, all right, that one, this one right here, all right. And what the software does is it will look for pixel structures or patterns, and it will try to match up that pattern to the next tile over. All right, so it tries to say, hey, where are the pixels that match between these two shots? All right, and in order to do that, you have to have shots where you have overlap, and this is the next tile, okay? And this panoramic stitching will try to match up the pixels on each of these tiles where there's a match, okay? That's what this, all right, now and this is a component of repairing this parallax, because it doesn't, the camera, as it's going across like this, is not perfectly lined up. It's not, it can't, all right? That scene out there, it does not perfectly line up each of these so that there is no overlap. And so they anticipate that there will be an overlap that can be used to figure out which of these tiles merge together. And certainly there's an overlap on the bottom as well, and possibly the top. Here's my point, is in your Mandelbulb application, you do not have any overlap in the tiles. Mandelbulb, you get a tile, and then you get the next tile. There is no overlap. The pixel right here, all right, there is not going to be a matching pixel or pixel pattern on the next tile. This is a pixel perfect separation of these tiles. Okay. All right, so we're getting over time here on this session, but what I wanted to impress upon you is this. The Mandelbulb does a beautiful job in dividing a large render into tiles. There is no overlap between the tiles. They line up perfectly. Most, if not all, of the panoramic stitching software will not work. Huggin doesn't work. There's software that's been put out by Canon, by Nikon for stitching panoramics. Photoshop and GIMP, they all have stitching software, stitching algorithms or functionality, and they all anticipate and demand overlapping, and they all try to accommodate for this parallax error. They don't work for Mandelbulb. They don't work. Don't even bother. Been there, done that. They don't work. I did find an application that does work. All right, so, but I just wanted to introduce you to the concept that Mandelbulb does a great job in tiling, but it does not do anything for merging or stitching those tiles back together. And most of the software that you're going to run into does not work with the Mandelbulb tiling. Okay, all right, enough on this. Hey, I'll see you back the next session. We'll continue this discussion. I'll see you there.